The Hornets win in exciting fashion last night. Brandon Miller with the game-winning tip-in after a turnover. LaMelo Ball was excellent in the fourth. Miles Bridges, clearly the best game of the season so far. Lots to get to in this edition of Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free
Hornets.
And available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There is the chanting Doug Branson.
Hornets.
Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can find his subtext information there as well. You can also find him on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me on WFNZ every from 12 to 3 p.m. Couple things real quickly. I know, hold your horses, people, because we're going to dive into this game real quickly, but I do want to tell everyone that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And also, your favorite podcast has a new one, introducing the Locked On Hornets Daily Newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage, delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. It's going to be an exciting one after the win last night. Brandon Miller, tip in after what was a chaotic inbound pass. Miles Bridges had to keep 1 foot up from stepping out of bounds, save it, swing to Grant Williams. Great look from Grant, by the way. He thought it was going in from three ball, missed it. And what is Brandon doing? He's crashing. Offensive rebound. It's been a big improvement from last year, and it showed up last night in winning time. Going through contact, Brandon Miller was able to grab the rebound, shoot on the way down. It goes in. The Hornets, they beat the Pistons just by a single point, 108-107. Exciting way to end this game, Doug.
So I was listening to our family member, Nada Edwards. He has restarted a little mini podcast called The Sting on his Substack, Dispatches from Spectrum Center. And on there, the main theme was that things are different now with Charles Lee, with management, with the players. Things are different now. One thing that isn't different is that the Hornets are still a bit of a cluster bleep when it comes to inbounds plays. And this is something that goes back, this curse of the inbounds play goes back far beyond the curse of the ankle injuries for the Charlotte Hornets. But what is different is that you have players right now like Brandon Miller who are making all NBA plays, who are staying aware, who are fighting, who are making a difference. That corner crash was amazing. Teams are focused now on doing more corner crashes because it's easier to get offensive rebounds that way, because oftentimes the person that's responsible for boxing out is, you just have a little bit more of an advantage from that corner crash position. So Brandon Miller does it. He uses a little move that he credited to his football days as a wide receiver in his post-game press conference. Right. Use a little swim move. Whatever you needed to do to get it done, he got it done. And the Hornets get a victory in a game that David Walker on yesterday's show called a must-win. That's 2 straight must-wins calls from this show, and they've won the game.
It's destiny. I don't know if we can bring it out every time. I feel like we have to have some kind of reload power. So maybe every 3 games is when we can finally use it. But you need to reload the button before you can pull the trigger again. So we will not call it for this upcoming matchup against the Pacers. By the way, everyone crashing, right? We've seen offensive rebounding be a big thing for this squad. That is different from previous Hornets rosters. LaMelo Ball was crashing too. So everybody's filling their lane, right? It's Brandon with the corner crash. It's LaMelo at the top of the key. He jumps up just hoping, all right, I'll be ready if the ball bounces my way. I'm going to be in the air already. I'm beating my man to the spot. Let's see if it comes my way. But obviously it goes to Brandon, who ends up winning it. And LaMelo, goodness gracious, like what a fourth quarter from him. I tweeted this out, just cackling with some of the three-pointers that he was hitting. Deep threes, step back threes. Doug, this has been a theme, right? Not that it's all that different from what we've seen in the past for LaMelo, but I go back to Toronto, Remember, it was the second quarter against the Raptors, and they had that near 140-point explosion. When LaMelo sees one go through the hoop, it's done. Like, he's just going to take a couple, and they're going to be crazy threes, and more often than not, they're going to go in. LaMelo is like one of the more dangerous shooters in the NBA, period. But when you see one go in after a rough start, it's like, okay, I could be in for a world of hurting these next 3 minutes from LaMelo. And that's what happened in the fourth quarter last night to keep them at pace and come back against Detroit, who found their rhythm in the fourth too and found that lead once more.
Every close win has multiple storylines, and it's difficult sometimes to really figure out which one is the most important, because I think a lot of people are going to focus on this Miller game winner, and they should, because it's the first time the Hornets have had a buzzer beater since going back to the COVID season when nobody was even watching in the arena. It was Terry Rozier with a game winner. So people are going to focus on that, and particularly because Brandon Miller gets turned over by Ron Holland just a play before that cost them the lead. And then, Brandon Miller has the big play, the resilience, which was mentioned by Charles Lee after the game, just the confidence, the resilience, the poise, the composure that Brandon Miller showed was incredible. But I think the most important storyline of this game was LaMelo Ball's second half, which was 18 points versus 7 points in the first half, 15 of those points in the fourth quarter. He was amazing, doing it from three, putting his head down when he had to, getting to the rim and hitting buckets, fighting through frustration that he had that was righteous frustration with some of the non-calls. It's just game to game. It's so wildly different. The respect that LaMelo gets and then the disrespect that he gets. I thought he was disrespected by the referees in this game. But what I love to see from LaMelo is that for the most part, he kept his poise. There was a particular moment in the second quarter that I noted in my game notes. David Walker did the game notes, by the way, for Every Hornets Boxscore. Go check that out. But in my game notes, I noted this particular moment in the second quarter, early second quarter, when he goes in for a drive, misses. He tries to go for that little steal after a miss where he thinks he's fouled, and luckily he didn't get called for the foul there, but he goes to complain to the ref and realizes, nope, this is a transition play, runs back, helps to bottle up the ball handler, stops an easy bucket, and then the next dead ball, then he goes to the referee. That's growth, folks. That's what we need to see more of. We need to see it consistently. Maturity from LaMelo Ball. We saw it. And we also saw, final thing on LaMelo for me, is we saw him do the thing that I wanted, that I called for in yesterday's episode, which is in the first half, he made things happen for other people. He was assisting. He was moving the ball quickly. He was not forcing his own offense. I think that helped Miles Bridges get going in this game. And I was just so impressed with what LaMelo Ball put on display last night.
6 of 12 in the fourth quarter. He scored 15 points in the fourth. He went 3 of 5 from three. And the 12 field goal attempts, that's a lot, but it's okay if you're shooting 50% and above 50% from three. So awesome stuff from LaMelo. But he wasn't the only guy that gave us some awesome stuff last night. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball. We need to celebrate what Miles Bridges did on the floor. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
It's been a rough go for Miles, no doubt about it. He said that he was embracing this new tertiary role, but we haven't seen the production come along with it until last night. Miles with 27 points. We'll dive into his performance in just a few moments. Coming up here, Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Skims. I know what you're thinking. Skims? Kim Kardashian? What are they doing here on a niche basketball podcast? Plus, isn't that a woman's company anyway? No, it's not. I'm here to tell you that Skims is now launching their men's underwear line. I'm sure they've already launched it, but now they're launching it here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And look, I feel like at this point, a lot of people, they've tried a bunch of different boxer briefs in the game, but nothing ever fits just right. I think we finally have a winner, guys. Skims came out with their Cotton 5 boxer brief, and it honestly puts other brands to shame. They hit it right at the thigh. They stay there. That's the key. They don't move around. They don't bag out. They don't give you the 5 p.m. wedgie. I don't even think they give you the 3 p.m. wedgie. Just wedgies eradicated all around. Done. If you're a boxer brief guy like me, this is the one. Skims. I'm telling you. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you too. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. Also available at skims.com. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Miles was excellent in this game, and he needed this performance. I think the Hornets did, right? I mean, if you're going to win by only 1 point, and one of these guys leads with 27, I'd say he was the star of the game. Maybe the fourth quarter it was LaMelo, and then the game-winning play was Brandon. But for the most part, Doug, it was Miles that was doing a ton of the work. He had 3 points in the first, but really that second quarter, Miles went off for 9 points. He was getting to the foul line a ton. He was 4 of 4. He was perfect from the field, including a three-pointer shot, 4 rebounds, which they also needed, rebounding all across the board. He was big in the second quarter there. By far, Miles' best performance, and Charles Lee had to switch some stuff up for him to get him going here, Doug, and good on Charles Lee for making that call.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, is that after the game, Charles Lee was asked about Miles's play, and he really, I thought, gave up a lot of info that I wasn't expecting him to give up, which was that, they've, in the actions that they've called for the team so far, there have been things for the guards, Mann, Miller. There have been a lot of actions that haven't necessarily involved Miles Bridges, and a lot of times Lee said that Miles kind of finds himself in the corner with not a lot to do. Very reminiscent of Miles's early days with the Hornets in his rookie season. And that's just not where Miles is going to be the most effective. He needs to be facilitated too. He needs room to get into the paint and do what he does. And so that's what he got here. You saw him get backdoor several times. LaMelo put the pass perfectly on time. And, he gets a few dunks there, but just early, getting into his offense early, offense being made for him early, got him into a rhythm. Then he goes 2 for 3 from 3. Again, you got to help him build his confidence early so that you can get big time shots, because he's a big time shooter, which has made the ugliness of his shot so far this season baffling to me. Like, what was going on there? And I just think a lot of it is rhythm. A lot of it is, him not getting involved early and then just not being ready for the moment. So I'm glad to see that they're fixing that. And it is an indicator too, Walker, that Lee, along with everyone else, is figuring all of this out, figuring this Hornets team out, figuring the head coaching position out. And so there are going to be these like learning experiences for not just for the players, but for Charles Lee as well. And it's good to see him learning, adapting, and changing quickly.
Well, by far, Miles' most efficient night. We did see Miles against Atlanta get to the foul line quite a bit. He was 8 of 8 against Atlanta. He was 9 of 9 here. So the best version of a lot of players are getting to the foul line and making your shots. But I think Miles, maybe it stands out more because when Miles plays aggressively, that's how he wins. And that's what we've talked about quite a bit. Hitting your shots, that's great. We want you to be a great shooter. Everybody being a great shooter would be phenomenal. But with Miles, it's more so attacking the rim. Showed a little bit of that bounce last night, too, that he told you that he had back. So that was nice to see also from Miles against Detroit. And I just think for me in that Charles Lee comment, I like that Charles is adjusting so early. It's okay. I have a player that is gifted offensively, that is one of our best offensive players, but he's in a funk right now. How do we get him out of it? Let's pay some attention to him. Like let's figure this out, because not only is it going to help Miles, but helping Miles helps the team. And it's one of those point guard type of philosophies where you feed your big guy early in the game, let him get his touches because everyone knows he's going to be in for a dirty work type of night. It's not necessarily that for Miles, but you try to give Miles his touches because you don't want him to check out in this new regime if we're 15 games in. So just go ahead and address it now, and then we can adapt and figure it all out, as you mentioned. New time head coach, that attention to detail. Yeah, I really like that. I like that decision from Charles Lee to help Miles out in that regard. And then where's the happy medium? Because it's not going to be Miles scoring 27 points all the time. How do we mesh all of this together for everyone to produce every night?
No, but sometimes you're going to need him to score 20-plus points, and that's what I was asking for, because it felt like LaMelo was pressing offensively, and I think it's because he didn't trust anyone else to score. And so, running these actions and running them successfully, I mean, there was a play in the fourth quarter where Bridges runs all the way up to fake a screen to LaMelo, kind of a decoy is what they call it, ghost screen, where he comes up, kind of fakes the screen.
Right.
LaMelo gives it to Josh Green at the elbow, and Miles Bridges essentially runs a little like horseshoe loop-de-loops. He fakes. I don't even know if it's a fake screen. It was just like a little loop-de-loop, and then he gets the guy on his back, and then Josh Green just hits him backdoor. That's the kind of stuff, again, that you have to run to get a guy going, get him going towards the rim, because if he's making at the rim, it's just less variance in the offense. And they had a tough time scoring in this game at the rim in general. And so, utilizing him as much as possible, I think, is going to be really key, because you don't have Mark Williams. You don't have Nick Richards to do as much of the cleanup duty as they would do. And Mark, it's hard to remember because it's been so long, it feels like, since we've seen him play. But he was a guy you could throw it to and has to go get a bucket near the rim. There just aren't many of those guys available right now. And so they've got to find these creative ways to get Miles going.
And they did just that last night. Now, we'll see if this is the spark that gives you some consistency for Miles, but at least we got a good performance from him against the Pistons. Onward, you have the Pacers, you have Philadelphia also. Joel Embiid not going to be playing in that game because he's suspended. If we're just doing a schedule look ahead and the difficulty of it, we'll wait for another must-win. We'll wait. But it's nice. Real nice that they're able to get this one, because if you don't have Brandon Miller crash, or even if he misses the layup, then you might just be looking at a couple of other losses in a row. It's amazing what one bucket can do. Like, it can change the way that we talk about all of this if you have one more point in the loss column and one less point in the win column. All right, you go ahead.
I like that. I want to keep talking about what this win means and what it doesn't mean, because we got to be careful when you get a win against the Detroit Pistons, who have been playing better. We got to be careful here. So let's keep talking about that.
Okay, what does it mean? Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
The significance, are you happy with the way that the Hornets played, or are we just happy with the fun fourth quarter? It was undeniably fun, but was it still good basketball that we saw? We'll try to decipher that in the last segment of LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Real quickly, I think that was a 1.5 point spread for the Hornets in their favor. So that kicker, that hurts you. If you bet on the Hornets, I know it hurts you, but if you're a Hornets fan, all you care about is the win, okay? Bad beats, whatever. We got the win, even if you weren't able to get that kicker. Go to FanDuel, again, America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. But what does it all mean, Basil? What does this win mean for the Charlotte Hornets? Because it was nice. Detroit, I said it yesterday, I like what Detroit did this offseason in a go-get-'em type of attitude. What are we going to go get? A play-in spot. But that's good for them, right? And we talked about the parallels that could be made for this squad. A play-in spot where they don't get blown out by 30 points and then possibly get to the playoff. That's the kind of step you want to take. I like what you're getting from Detroit from some of these vets. Tim Hardaway showed up with some big-time shots last night. Cade Cunningham figuring it out. I thought Jaden Ivey, he's a fun ball player, man, and it feels like they're starting to figure some stuff out in the backcourt. So it's not what last year's or even the year before's Pistons teams were. They get the dub at home, nice, but like offensively, even still, they weren't all that efficient just overall, Doug. The shooting wasn't there. Luckily, Detroit wasn't shooting the basketball all that well from three either. But the Hornets weren't also. They were taking a lot of threes. They were taking a lot of rim shots, but they weren't hitting a ton. Yeah, so what do you think? What does this mean?
Well, I will say that in yesterday's episode in our preview, I said the Hornets can outshoot the Detroit Pistons, and they could, in fact, outshoot them. It was 31.8% to 31.3%. So they did.
Nailed it.
But they shot 44 of them versus 32 for the Detroit Pistons, and I don't think they made one in the entire first quarter. So, yeah, I mean, they did it, and they also out-rebounded them by 1 rebound, that
That's
final
right.
rebound by Brandon Miller. But again, given the size discrepancies that you had with the Hornets missing both of their centers and the size and physicality that Detroit offers you, you would expect that margin to be greater. Now, Jalen Duren, he gets that ankle roll in the second possession of the game and tried to fight through it, but was obviously hobbled. Missing him was a huge factor in this game, which is why I think you have to be careful with this result and thinking like, oh, they went in and made an adjustment and crashed the glass. They didn't really crash the glass. I mean, 8 offensive rebounds. They've had way more in more games this season. And what was second chance points? 17. Now that's great. They took advantage of the 8. And sometimes we've seen that too, where they get a lot of offensive rebounds, it gets kicked out, and then you miss a 3 or they miss a couple of tap-ins. So, it's one thing to get the offensive rebound. It's another to actually convert it. The Hornets converted it in this game. The bigger adjustment for me, I don't even think the rebounding is a big story that you can take away because, other than the final rebound, because Jalen Duren was out. The bigger story to me was that the Hornets were able to make adjustments mid-game against Cade Cunningham, who was lighting them on fire at 16 points in the first half, 4 points in the second half of a close game where you would expect Cade to be more of a factor. Now, he was 20, 10, and 10. I mean, that's a pretty good box score line. But when asked about it after the game, Charles Lee said that he liked the way that they were moving over towards Cade Cunningham when he would try to back down a guard, and try to get a play at the rim. A guy would come over to shade, but there wasn't enough activity. I saw one time where Taj would kind of just like cozy up next to him, but there were no hands. They weren't really affecting Cade in any kind of way. In the second half, they started to get a little bit more handsy with him, started to get physical, turned the Pistons over a little bit more. And so what I take away from this game is that the Hornets are learning, they are developing. There will be games like this in the future. There will be, until they get some of this, one of their centers back, Mark Williams, hopefully, until they get that back, I don't think any of this is sustainable, but it's fun to watch them fight.
It is, and it at least gives you a shot when they're able to adjust. But you're right, Jalen Duren going out, he had 3 rebounds in like the 8 minutes that he played. I mean, he's on pace for 12 in a 30-minute game, 14, something around there. I know that you're taking rebounds away from other players on the Pistons, but Duren is a glass cleaner. So with him being out, losing another big guy, trying to level the playing field at center as much as you can, they were able to do that, which was nice to see. A couple of other notes just to see what some other Hornets did. Trey Mann, rough shooting night for him. Probably his worst night, certainly offensively. 21 minutes played for Trey Mann, but only 2 of 7. Missed all 4 of his 3-point attempts in this game. Scored 4 points. We're used to seeing him average 20 and only 4 for him. Cody Martin outscored him. Diabate scored as many. Grant Williams, 12 off of the bench. Maybe we go there, Doug, because 12 points for Grant gave you the shot. Also 7 rebounds for Grant, too. He has been someone that has a new role this season that I think has done a nice job in his new role, where that hadn't been true for Miles until Charles had to adjust some stuff last night. I think what Grant has been asked to do better suits him in a bunch of ways. You're smiling. We play this game a lot. Why is Doug laughing? Why is Doug smiling? Tell the people.
Oh, he has multiple roles this season. I think one of them is to be the bleep hole of the team, is to grab a guy, hard foul them, get a technical every once in a while, and just get in the other team's head. You need that guy, honestly. That guy can be effective for you in a playoff situation where pressures get super high and you can affect the team's mental by having a bleep hole on your team. And so he's played that role. He also makes 1 or 2 weird plays a game. There was an inbounds that was odd, a couple of fouls that you go what are you doing there? It wasn't you intending to be a bleep hole. That was just you messing up really badly. So, I think that's been part of Grant's role too. But I think you take it because, again, he brings a certain attitude to this Hornets team that they really, really need. Taj Gibson, I think he's doing the best he can in those limited minutes. And Tijon Salon, not much of a factor in this game. Josh Green, I thought was really good defensively, was a non-factor offensively. Goose egg for him in 24 minutes of play, 0 of 4 from the field.
Man, I love him, though.
In a sense, you kind of got away with one here, right? Because you had a big game from Miles. You had a big game from LaMelo. Brandon's coming along, too. Obviously made the play at the end. And that was enough. But they could do that game a couple of times. And if you're going to get that from the bench, you're probably going to lose more of those than you're going to win.
But I think Josh Green, love what we're getting from him because you're right, defensively, he's just active. He's just not going to quit. I like having that type of perimeter player with that kind of size. And he had been hitting some shots. Now, you're right, he was a non-factor offensively. I'm not looking for him to go get a bucket. So it's okay. Josh Green is going to have other goose eggs that he throws up there. Just watch what he did in the Olympics. But we're going to respect what he does defensively. And maybe he averages what? Like, can we get to 8 points a game? If he averages 8 points a game on the season, 7, something like that, then that's fine, especially in his 25 minutes that he logged. You have another Josh Green thought?
Not another Josh Green thought. I'm just perusing the box score here, and I noticed that LaMelo Ball had 0 fast break points. Miles Bridges had 6. Brandon Miller had 4.
They didn't do anything transition. Like, there was no transition for the Hornets in this game.
And then there wasn't much to be had, for sure. And then, and that credit Detroit. I mean, they play good defense. Even losing Jalen Duren, they are active. I mean, you saw Ron Holland assaulting Brandon Miller and got away with it. But he did have 5 second chance points. And I think that's interesting because we haven't seen, to begin this season, LaMelo Ball active rebounder like we've seen in seasons past. We saw it in this game, particularly when they need it. I mean, all the guards really did. I mean, you had LaMelo Ball, 6 rebounds, Brandon Miller, 6 rebounds, and then small ball center Grant Williams, 7 rebounds. Miles Bridges steps up with 7 rebounds, and Trey Mann had 3. Seth Curry with 2. So it was a team effort on the boards. But the 0 fast break points, I think, is interesting because, yes, they didn't have a lot of transition opportunities, but you heard Charles Lee in some of those critiques that we talked about a few episodes also mention that LaMelo Ball sometimes this season at least, has played a little too fast, getting ahead of his teammates a little bit in some of these transition opportunities, and those end up either resulting in turnovers because the offense doesn't really have a chance to get in a rhythm or understand what's doing, or it turns into a LaMelo forced shot. So I thought what LaMelo did a great job of in this game was slowing it down a little bit, particularly when you know the defense is going to be committed to getting back in transition. Let's slow it down. Let's get the best look. Maybe that looks for me on a step back, amazing 3-point shot, or maybe we can run some action to get Miles, to get Miller, to get Grant Williams a little bit more involved. Again, I can't praise LaMelo Ball enough. I thought he was, again, we talked a lot about Miles too. I mean, 27 points. He was the team leader in points. Had to have that. But I thought LaMelo made the most key adjustments, key improvements from the last couple of games to this game than any other player.
Okay, we got people working on the house right now in our last moments here on Locked On Hornets.
Everyone's building. The Hornets are building something. Yep. You're building something. Mm-hmm. I'm in a new space. We're all building here. We're all developing. We're in the second, as the Schlotkin said, we're in the second inning of a 9-inning ball game.
You hear that? That's what success sounds like right there. That's what foundation sounds like. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Check out everyhornetsboxscore.com. That's Doug's Substack. You can also text him there and listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Hornets!